if someone asks you to do something and you don't know how to do it, just say yes and go find out afterwards.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Expedition Business, where we talk to inspiring entrepreneurs about the highs and lows of their business journey and how on earth they manage to keep the flame of business adventure burning. My name is Christelle Rosley Fenton. I have the honor of talking to Simone Musgrave, founder of Musgrave Gin today. But before I introduce Simone to you, I would like to remind you to subscribe, comment, and share this podcast with as many of your friends and family as possible. Without your help, we cannot continue to share the amazing stories of our South African entrepreneurs, such as Simone. Simone Musgrave is the founder of Musgrave Crafted Spirits, home to Musgrave Craft Gin. She has a trained eye for spotting trends and has been in charge of innovation and strategy throughout her career, traveling the globe to scout ideas, analyzing and applying trends, and predicting trends and product directions. Simone, welcome to Expedition Business.
Thank you very much. And yeah, thank you for having me. It sounds like a worthwhile conversation to have in South Africa at the moment.
Absolutely, absolutely. We definitely do need good news, and that is what Expedition Business is all about. And yeah, sharing all these amazing stories. But speaking of stories, you're a big believer, from what I can gather, that every brand should have a great story. And from what I see, the story of Musgrave Gin started way back in 1949 when your grandfather left Plymouth en route to Africa. How did that story got into the Musgrave Gin story?
Yeah, so it's really a brand, our sort of family story, and my African story and my father's is something that I've always thought is worth telling, and I just never sort of had a platform to do that. My grandfather had written this book just before he died of all his stories of 30 years adventuring in Africa. And so it was so rich of story that I thought, well, there's got to be a brand sitting in here. So when I started Musgrave Gin, I could think of no better name for the brand and a story, because as we know, gin is all about the botanicals and where they come from. And so this was a story of origin. And so it really started to, as I climbed more and more into the story, it sort of the product. So it was really a no-brainer to use my own personal story, of which I can tell better than anyone.
And your surname, you've said, also worked pretty well with the whole name of your new gin.
Correct. Yes, and when I started it, I wanted to speak about the choice of botanicals, and a botanical story in gin is really from source. So you get the Fynbos gins that talk about all the plants that come from different places in the Cape, and across the world. In the UK, it's often Scottish heather, or in Ireland, it's specific botanicals. For me, it was an African story, and I'm South African, and I wanted to reflect the flavors of Africa. And this was the perfect story to go and search for those botanicals. So the story really is everywhere my grandfather lived, which started on him coming to Africa on a boat, on a ship for 3 months, and um, deciding to be a missionary in Africa. And he was 19 years old, and he really didn't want to stay in the UK. His choices were to continue to be a carpenter or to go on this adventure. He had the choice of India and Africa, and he was religious, and the church offered these adventures. So he decided to come to Africa, and for 30 years, he brought my father, who was 9 months old, also very brave, to go on a ship to Africa with a small baby. My grandmother was a nurse, and they decided to go into the deepest, darkest Kenya and Tanzania, and start a mission center. So the next 30 years saw him moving around, two more children that he had in Africa, and this body of stories that we got him to write down of all the different places. So I tracked those and looked at what are the botanicals that are in these places, and that was my gin story.
Sure, sure. And have you published these stories of where the botanicals come from for each brand?
We talk about some of the key botanicals, and we haven't. My grandfather's book was sort of published for the church and the family, I guess. But the story of our botanicals, our key ones, we talk. The ones that give that flavor as you open the bottle, as you take your first sip. We talk about them quite a lot in our brand story.
Wow. It
Yeah.
makes drinking your gin even more worthwhile. Apart from the taste, the story makes it extra, extra special. But Simone, something that you've mentioned, your grandfather had the choice of being a carpenter or going on
Yeah.
an adventure in Africa. And it almost lets me think of when we are, especially in a corporate situation, like you've been in corporate for quite some time,
Mm.
we have choices. And taking that leap of faith into entrepreneurship can change your life completely. And I
Yeah.
think that's what's happened for you pretty much. You could have stayed in corporate.
Absolutely. Well, I could have stayed in corporate, but I felt I had done my time. I was also going to get retrenched, and I really couldn't imagine sort of finding another company to make my way in. And it was just, I was leading innovation in the business, and the business I was in was quite a groundbreaker in the innovation journey, and there wasn't really going to be that same job available anywhere else. So I also wanted to choose my own freedom. I wanted to determine when I go on holiday. I wanted to control my own financial future. And so when this opportunity came around, and I call my retrenchment an opportunity, I thought I'd jump out. And luckily, I found something to jump onto.
Mm-hmm. And what a journey it has been since then. But something that interests me, somewhere along the line, I've read that you were also a single mother at the time when you got retrenched. How did that influence your journey?
Well, I was a sole breadwinner. I was a single mom. I'd always had jobs that allowed me to spend time with my children, and the the journey really was I was very lucky along my corporate journey, in that I had people who knew that I had to fetch kids at 3:30 and didn't control every move I made. And my fear of going into another company was I wouldn't have that. And I really wanted to be a present mother,
Mm.
and also in relation to my two daughters. So, I also grew up with an entrepreneurial family. My father's had his own businesses his whole life, and it was just something we knew that this flexibility is what I wanted. So
Mm-hmm.
took the step. I took the step was really because I it wasn't that conscious. I really had started Musgrave as a sideline while I was waiting to be retrenched. It took them
Mm-hmm.
18 months for me, and by then I'd already launched. We launched our original, and of course the first Musgrave Pink, which is the first pink in South Africa. And so by the time I got retrenched, I actually was selling about 5,000 bottles a month. And I was able to take a small salary. I also had a package that I'd stuck in there and waited for. So I was quite lucky in that I already had proved concept while I was getting a salary. And we were sort of on the, I really needed to leave because I was moonlighting and doing gin as a sideline, almost full-time operation. Yeah, so I was moonlighting during the 18 months. They were, corporate takes a long time to do anything, and they were faffing around trying to decide how and when, and so in those 18 months, I built a business. And so by the time I finally got retrenched, my business was quite on the road, and it was a crazy time. In fact, we'd launched our second gin, the first pink in South Africa, and so it was easy for me to jump straight in. And I was taking a small salary. I had a backup retrenchment plan, and so it happened quite seamlessly, which is some advice I often give is if you can start a sideline that becomes a business and keep the salary to keep you safe in the beginning, it's quite a nice safety net.
That was actually my next question. What would be your advice for people in similar situations? But yeah, it does sound like sound advice.
Yeah, and I think also that retrenchment is often an opportunity. It seems so devastating when it happens, and it's scary. But the what it does give you is a kickstart into possibly your next thing, whether that's find another job and jumping up the ladder, or starting your own business. So it can be an opportunity, and to see it like that is perhaps more it's more positive than panicking.
Absolutely. Something else that interests me, and it sort of just happened that we realized this morning that you are a single mother, as well as with all our other female entrepreneurs that we've interviewed so far. We thought it was
That
quite funny. Do you think that it makes a difference in your entrepreneurial decisions that you take if you are under pressure being a single mother?
um I don't know if it makes any difference in my decisions. I mean, having to earn, not all single mothers are sole breadwinners either. So for me, it was essential that I made it work, because that was how I had to pay and support them. So I think that it didn't really influence my decisions so much, as just knowing I've got to bring home the bacon and get on with it. Yeah,
And don't have a second option to fall back on.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that does make quite a big difference. Um, Obviously, running a business isn't just sunshine and roses. How do you get through your bad days when things aren't going the way it should be going, or don't you get the bad days?
Oh no, there's a lot of bad days, and I think how I get through it is often a yoga or exercise, or in Cape Town, I'm on the mountain. If I can, if it gives me the space, I like to walk on my own on the mountain, just think, and just sort of get into nature. I think that's for me the best way, is just get away from the desk, get away from the problem for a bit, think about it. I'm a very sociable person, phone up a friend, chat it through, but I think also not to dwell on certain things. There's stuff that is in my control, and there's stuff that isn't. And I really try and focus on what I can change, not what I can't. So there are days that you just, and especially in the alcohol industry, you just get really full of all the red tape, and it's quite a male industry. It's quite gritty. It's not easy to convince people that this female with a pink gin is going to make change your life. But there's only so much I can do, and all I can do is go back and do the things I do best, and let the other things fall into place around me.
Okay, and what would you describe being the things that you do best?
I think that I innovate and create ideas, and that's always been the skill that I love doing, and the jobs that I've had have always been around ideas. And I really do think I have an insight into bringing the customer a product that excites them, and that tells a story, and is a conversation piece. And whatever we've done has done that. So I'm not great at finances, I can tell you that right now. I'm not great. I can do logistics, but I don't like it. Um, I'm not a maker of much. I'm not a distiller. I can put together the idea of a product, but I need someone to make it. But I can create those ideas and take them to the people to put together. In the same way, I need a good accountant around me. I need a good distiller, and those are all pieces of the entrepreneurship puzzle that you need to create and put together. So I'm a great project manager, and I bring ideas into that mix that I can make happen.
So you say you still use distillers, you don't do your own distilling.
My model was always to contract distill, And that is because I'm not a distiller. To build a distillery is huge investment and obviously skill.
Mm,
And that's really where I wanted to be. I wanted to create a brand, a
mm,
luxury brand. And I started in gin, but I always said we're not only gin. And we ended up getting involved in brandy as well.
mm,
And that's really how I've envisioned the business. And I worked for factories that produced all the Woolworths food in my career. And that's sort of the same model, right? It's
yes.
other people making the product. And so that was sort of where I came from. I had a little venture into a baby food business at one stage, which I sold to Purity Baby Food. And there I had my own factory. And one gets quite bogged down in the running of the factory, and the marketing is quite hard to pull yourself away to focus on. And so
Mm,
I really do this time round make sure that the marketing, the brand is what I was building, because essentially at the end of the day, the brand is what people want. I always had a vision to sell the business, and a brand is what people buy.
mm,
So that's why the distilling for me, or have building another factory, wasn't really attractive.
mm. That's also one of the reasons why you didn't need a license right at the beginning.
At the beginning, I didn't really, because I wasn't touching the product. It was being made by a distillery, it was being distributed by distribution agents, and all we were doing was talking about it. And
Mm-hmm.
so we weren't even warehousing at that stage. Obviously, when we started to warehouse and distribute ourselves, we then did. But it allowed, again, a lot of the red tape to not come into play in the early days.
Mm, mm. But now you pretty much bogged down with red tape from time to time.
Yes. Well, so I've sold Musgrave to a big liquor business only two months ago. And so I've got no red tape now. But I've had my time of a lot of red tape and a lot of, fighting with SARS on excise duties. COVID obviously put another spanner in the works. And then, the licensing in this country is designed to make it difficult for you. So, and every year you've got to renew. So it's complicated. But
Mm,
we did it. We managed. But we were at a stage where we had the resources and people employed to be able to help with that. I wasn't coping with this on my own.
mm. Which does help, especially if it's
Yeah,
something you don't like.
exactly. Employed
Definitely a
around you.
model that I want to follow there.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so right now you are on a brand new path. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? What you've got in mind going forward?
Sure. So I'd always built Musgrave to sell the brand. I wanted to build it and sell it in 5 years. And in 2019, we were talking to various big companies about buying Musgrave. We were at the peak of our turnover, and then COVID took us down. Luckily, Musgrave was such a strong brand. Our business model, that we didn't have a factory and we didn't have all these overheads, was a huge advantage to us, and we were really strong in the consumer's mind.
Mm,
So I was hoping to sell Musgrave on the fifth year, which was what I set out to do, but that happened. We had to wait till COVID sort of ended, and then we made a deal.
okay.
So the deal went through the end of June to a company called Halewood, who bought Musgrave as part of their brand mix. And the idea there was really that, in fact, I made the right decision, because the liquor industry post COVID had become incredibly difficult to manage. Plus, the gin trend had settled.
Mm,
There were so many players in the gin market, over 500 products, and it was really just a bit of a dogfight.
mm,
Although most very strong on the shelf, we were under price pressure. The price to the consumer had changed. We had to stay under 400 Rand, or, not survive. Um, but but along the journey, we knew that was always coming. So that is why I always said that, this gin trend, this big thing, is not going to last forever. And and so that was my decision to sell. So here I am now. I don't own Musgrave at all, and someone else is looking after my third child.
So, going forward, what is your big mountains, metaphorical mountains, that you still want to climb within the next 3 to 5 years?
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of people ask, what am I going to do now? There's a couple of things that have come up, which I didn't ask for. I was meant to have my year off. And of course, that was, maybe something that I think I'll enjoy. But in fact, I'm already, got itchy feet and itchy hands to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at businesses to invest in, and I always want to stay in the luxury space. I've also got involved with a very, very high end whiskey business, which again wasn't on my radar, but the opportunity came to me to take over management of a luxury cognac and whiskey business, sort of 40,000 rand a bottle, 5,000 rand a bottle type of business.
Wow.
And I'm probably going to end up working with them full time next year, but we're on a bit of a conversation at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's really excites me because it's a different category. So aged spirits, gin is not aged. You can make
Mm.
it in 16 hours. Think of keeping casks for 20 years, 30 years. The pricing is different. The way it's traded is different. Everything is different. So it's quite exciting to learn something new. Um, and it's a luxury market that is beyond South Africa, into markets that are the sort of luxury highest end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quite interesting. And I guess I'll dip my fingers into a little bit of brand consulting. I'm working with a mohair yarn business, which you may say, what do I know about that? But the
Uh-huh.
brand and this is a great little South African brand that is 82% export. We're the biggest producers of mohair in South Africa. She's got a great brand. But again, like most entrepreneurs with big factories, she has no time for the marketing side of it. So assisting there with a brand strategy, and this, it's no different from gin to yarn to any other products. It's all the same approach, the same principles apply.
Mm.
So I'm working with brands that I'm attracted to, that I like, the people I like, and that is makes me happy. And I guess the biggest thing for me is everything I do now must be give me joy, and I must enjoy it, and I must
Mm.
add value.
Mm.
So although I loved doing what I did with Musgrave, the liquor industry is very tough, and being a woman in that is also quite an interesting space.
Do you think being a woman in business is only tough in the liquor industry, or do you find that it's across all industries a bit of a challenge?
I can't really speak for other industries really. I know I know the food industry, which is a little bit friendlier to women because there are a lot of women in that category.
Mm-hmm.
So liquor industry, there's very few women. So and it's a very gritty. You're dealing with retail buyers. I think I've only accounted one who's a buyer in the retail liquor space, who's a woman. You're dealing with bottle store owners, you're going into gritty stores. You've got distributors, all male. The
Mm.
only place you find women is in that marketing space, and
Mm.
so there's just less women, and and it's a very cutthroat world. So I think industries that have those values attached to it are tough for women in South Africa. We have
Mm.
a very conservative environment to play in,
Mm.
and the industry is based on bullying, in my
Mm.
view, from the restaurant owners and small suppliers to the big liquor guys. There's a lot of bullying that goes on, and I think as a woman, you're always in the minority. I don't suffer bullies very easily, but it
Mm-hmm.
can wear you down. And day after day, when you're having to always bring your strength, is tiring.
Mm. But I do get the impression that the bigger the challenge, the more you get up to the challenge and are never afraid of taking up any challenges.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I really don't care what people think of me, and my aim is to be ethical, to be honorable in how I deal in business, and always be honest and always be true to my brand. And if they don't like it, that's not my problem. And if people don't like me in the way that I operate, then well, then I just don't deal with you.
Uh-huh.
And so if you just have a line in the sand of how you're prepared to operate and what you're prepared to do, I'm not going to sell my product as much as I need the few cases to someone who's treating me badly. I'd rather not sell that product to you. And to learn to walk away from those environments and not compromise yourself, because you need a sale that's based on a bullying relationship or on a threat. And I think it takes courage to walk away from these environments that don't serve you. That's,
What advice would you give to similar entrepreneurs who need to learn how to walk away?
I think listen to your gut instinct. Your gut instinct tells you very, very quickly who you're prepared to deal with and who you aren't. If it doesn't feel right, it's generally not.
Mm,
And someone pushes you to a price that you just can't maintain, or you're not going to make money, just walk away and just it's thank you very much, but it's not going to work for my business. So listen to your gut. Don't
mm,
listen to balance sheet always.
mm, mm. You mentioned earlier that, and I did say that you don't sound like you're scared of challenges, but you did mention that it does wear you down from time to time. Um, is there any
Done.
other special advice that you can give people to get out of that rut, to get out of the being bogged down situation?
COVID for me was a really awful time. I'm not generally someone who gets overly stressed or anxious or gives up. But COVID really, it was just like for 2 years, we could trade one day in three. And I had built this business with my blood, sweat, and tears as a single mom. I didn't ask the government for one thing. And and so when I kept getting a punch in the face every time, and I couldn't even take my own products that I'd worked so hard on and put it in my car, or I'd get arrested. And so just every step of the way, it was like, we're not going to be there to support you. And so, and I saw this, passion business of mine that was doing so well. Just, I had to retrench all my people. And as I said, one day in three for 2 years is what we could trade. And for me, there was no data that backed that up.
Mm,
And,
mm,
and so what I did in that environment, and my kids said to me, Mom, we don't know what to do with you anymore. You need to go and like de-stress somewhere. And I had boils growing up my skin, and it was totally not me.
mm,
And so I took myself off to the Cedarburg Mountains, and I stayed in a lodge for a few days, and I went for walks, and I just said, there's nothing, the power's out of my hands. There's nothing I can do here. Let it go. Everyone across the country, as we all know, was selling bootlegging booze around, and I saw my product being sold for thousands of rand in places that I didn't even know it appeared.
uh-huh.
Um, and so I decided to let go of all of that
Mm,
and just give up for a little couple of months and wait for the situation to come right, because
mm,
it wasn't up to. So I think my advice is to, again, what you can't control is just going to destroy you if you worry about it too much. It's to step away, let it pass, do what you can. So in the background, I started to work on developing what was our comeback strategy. And so I sat down and said, when we come back, the consumer is going to be excited to buy a booze, and we want our brand to be remembered as the one that they buy first when they can get into the bottle store.
mm,
And so I developed a strategy on renovating some of our packaging, bringing a limited edition in, and some excitement in the category. And so when they walked into that store and things were open, Musgrave was there answering their innovation, their excitement, and their newness
mm,
questions. And that is what I focused on. So I gave up trying to fight, and I just took a deep breath and said, okay, what can I do? And so when we came back, we were ready to bring this whole new look to our original Musgrave and a whole new product to the market, as well as a couple of events and some excitement some competitions on social media, and anything that touched our consumer and said, thank you for supporting us and thinking of us during this time.
Wow. Wow. That sounds like you can write a textbook, marketing textbook on this.
I am writing a book. That's what I am doing.
Okay, fantastic. And when is this book going to be published?
I don't know, but I'm in there. I'm sort of 3/4 of the way through, and then some editing. So it's a next year journey, probably. Some within the next year, I will have published that.
Okay.
I also walk around and do keynote addresses to share my story. So keeping busy and hopefully, sharing the insights and the kind of journeys and the experiences I've had.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine that the insights is quite exciting and worthwhile to listen to. Whereabout do you do all your keynotes? Only in the Cape area, or do you spread
I do
it?
it anywhere someone will pay me to go to. I'll go anywhere.
Okay, fantastic. And I assume the ideal is if there's a mountain close by that you can walk out.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's when I'm overseas and doing work there. I when I come back to Cape Town, I'm very happy to see that mountain. And it's so cliched. Everyone in Cape Town says that, but I genuinely get on that mountain often.
Okay. Simone, we've spoken about metaphorical mountains that you still want to climb, but you've also said that in the next few years you want to be more in the mountains physically. Is there any specific mountains that's on your radar that you want to hike out?
Well, I've climbed Kilimanjaro,
Mm-hmm.
which I climbed just before my 40th birthday, which was something I didn't plan to have in my bucket list, but came to me. I don't know if I'll go that high again, but I think there's Mont Blanc in France that I'd really like to climb. I've tried to climb the Japanese Mount Fuji. Just the weather was bad, so I couldn't do it. So those are probably two that I really would love to do, and those are not as high, and they're totally doable. So with a bit of training behind me, but the older I get, I better get onto it because
Uh-huh.
it's challenge.
Well, that's a good reason to get up and start hiking everything that you do want to hike.
Absolutely.
Because time is unfortunately ticking, that I know myself from personal experience. Tell me, in South Africa, is there any specific peaks that you still want to conquer?
I don't think so. I mean, I really like to do Fish River Canyon and the Drakensberg. I haven't been that side for years, so I think to really just be able to enjoy South Africa, there's so much to do, and get to these places that bring reflection and bring quietness, and those are the times that I get to think the best.
Mm, mm. Absolutely. As long as you've got a journal with you to write down everything that you think up.
Correct.
Simone, if you could be 20 years old again, what would you change? Would you change anything?
I don't know if I would change anything. It's easy to look back on your life and say, I should have done that. I don't have any regrets. I got married young, I got divorced young, but I had two amazing girls from that decision. And everything I've done has led me to this point. And every single life, everyone will go through that, where there was some things you may not choose to do again, but you did them, so you have to learn from them. I don't think that I would have studied anything different because you are who you are at that age.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would have lived in any other countries, and I'm really glad I had my children at 23 because, 26, because I was quite young in those days, but now how my life has panned out, I have a lot of freedom and they are grown up. And so I'm young enough to also be with them and do exciting things with them. So, those are the kind of decisions that you make, and in the end, they are your journey. Your journey is your own journey, and I don't think that your regrets well, I don't have any regrets that I feel I need to go back and change. I think we have to own our journeys, and they're there for a reason, to teach us what we needed to be taught. So, so for me, it's, if I was 20 again, I don't think I would give myself any better advice, except maybe to take every opportunity instead of only the six you did take.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, when you're young, you think you've got your whole life. So that's wasted on the youth. And I have a 26-year-old daughter now and a 24-year-old daughter. And I can give them all the advice in the world, but they will make their own decisions too.
Yes, and that's part of life. Although you would love them to follow your advice strictly.
Absolutely. But they need to, they know themselves better, so they need to follow their journey and live with their decisions too, and take responsibility for those decisions.
Mm-hmm. Have you encouraged them into an entrepreneurial world at all?
I mean, I would always say to them, being an entrepreneur is gives you freedom, and don't rule it out. But they have to feel that themselves. I also do believe, I couldn't have started Musgrave without being in corporate for those years. My network was built in corporate. My knowledge, my skills, my insights, my trend watching, everything positioned me to start Musgrave. Without that, I would never have been able to do it. And so I truly believe they need to spend time working for other people in a variety of businesses, to see, to learn, to build skills, to build networks, to learn how to work with other people. And they're both in London doing that right now.
Okay. You speaking of London, you've mentioned earlier that you don't regret being in South Africa. Do you plan on staying in South Africa, or are you also in the process of immigrating?
No, I'm in South Africa. I spent time. I bought a house in Greece, and I spend time in France, where my parents have a house, and my boyfriend lives in Mauritius at the moment, so we spend time there. But Africa's my home. Cape Town's my home. I'm building a new house actually, so I'm very much committed to South Africa. I like being able to travel. I've always loved travel. So that's yeah, I think that's the best scenario. But when I'm in Cape Town, I'm in South Africa. That's where I'm happiest.
Mm.
That's where I feel the most. I feel like I belong.
Right next to the mountain.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, and how about reading? Do you have any interests there? Any books that you can recommend?
I am a non-fiction reader mostly. I'm currently reading Shoe Dog,
Okay.
and I've just started, so I believe that's brilliant. I remember reading The Journey of Starbucks and being quite sort of impressed by his journey, and I learned a lot from that. I've read a lot of books around innovation theory and design thinking, which is obviously really my field. Um, and and I really am interested in obviously adventure type literature, travel literature. So those are the kind of books I generally go to, and then I'll find a cheap novel on a holiday beach somewhere sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me, I tend to, I noticed since I sold my business, I'm going more to the novel space because my brain is a bit freer. But
Mm.
I always find, that insight, that lesson, um, and so that I tend to head towards nonfiction style books.
Mm. It's quite interesting that you mentioned Shoe Dog because that has been given to me last night and I was told I have to read it again and again and again.
Yeah, so
So,
that's on my list for the next week or so, and I also have heard such great things about it.
mm. You wouldn't be interested, seeing that you are interested in adventure, to go off into a clothing brand like the Nikes and the Solomons and everything else that's surrounded by adventure.
I don't know much about clothing in terms of a business side of it. I like it and I buy a lot of it. But I don't I don't really know the industry well enough. I have been looking at a jewelry business to invest in. Um, and that really excites me. So who knows? Let's see where the next few years go. Um, but it's definitely anything in that space. I would look at a luxury space. So I'm really interested in that luxury brand and that purchaser and that how a brand is developed in the luxury mindset.
Mm.
So let's see where that goes.
All about luxury. But I see
Yeah.
this already. I don't know if it's part of your brand already. Musgrave crafted jewelry and Musgrave crafted furniture.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's not something that's there yet, but never say never.
Okay, sounds very, very interesting. Simone, any specific quotes that you would like to share with our fellow entrepreneurs that could motivate them, or are you not very much a believer in quotes?
I do look at quotes. I don't think I've got a big memory to store them, but the one that I speak about and that really struck a chord with me was Richard Branson said, if someone asks you to do something and you don't know how to do it, just say yes and go find out afterwards. And I guess I've pretty much run my whole business on that. I didn't know how to make gin, and I really knew very little about gin except how to drink it. But go learn anything and do anything. So, um, so I think that's definitely something that I live by.
Mm, mm. And yeah, speaking of that wise words of Richard, it sort of reminds me of, I think I've read somewhere about your dad that was working on the one brand after the other in your house as you grew up.
Mm.
I think we briefly spoke about that, but that must have had a major, major influence on you as well, with lots of wise words from your dad.
Yeah, I definitely was. Watching my dad sort of always being innovative and also reinventing businesses as one ended or one was sold. He started another. There's definitely influence there. I think we are very similar as well, and we both don't like rules very well, very
Mm-hmm.
much. So I think that we have a very entrepreneurial spirit in our home. As I was growing up and watching him and his sort of ability to adapt and change and create was a huge inspiration to me.